From high atop his secret broadcasting Shangri-La, overlooking New York, Miami, Austin, Seattle, and all points in between, this is America's #1 life coach, Darryl Mobley.
Hello, friends. You are listening to the Darryl Mobley Show, your life coach on the radio. The Darryl Mobley Show is the drama-free, success-focused excuses. They are not welcome. Forget the whining. Make progress. No negativity allowed. Work your plan. And zero, zilch, nada, psychobabble show. Here's why. So you can achieve your goals and live your best life. I'm Darryl Mobley, and I have been called son, brother, husband, dad, friend, Coach Mobley, and one of the best life coaches on the planet. Today, right here, right now, Coach Mobley is all yours. Let's get started.
Often blunt.
Go on.
Sometimes scary.
Go on.
And always on your side.
I'm a pretty big guy, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised how much fun we can have together.
Darryl Mobley is your life coach on the radio.
Let's talk about lies. That's right, lies. Today, I'm thrilled to have a conversation with Elizabeth Overstreet, the Love Strategist, about the lies in relationships. This episode of my show is titled Lie versus Lie. The 10 lies women tell men and men tell women. Elizabeth is a relationship coach. Her career evolved after years of studying relationship dynamics. Her philosophy is that relationships take a focused effort. She believes that finding the right mate is one of the most important decisions in your life, and I agree. In her coaching practice, Elizabeth helps her clients prepare for, find, and nurture healthy relationships. She is the author of Love You and He Will Too, the Smart Woman's Roadmap for Happy, Healthy Relationships. In this masterclass about relationships, we cover the following and a whole lot more. First of all, I'm going to tell you that lie number 8 will blow your mind. In addition, we talk about men start with the end in mind, always. We talk about self-love being self-accountability. We talk about how to control men. We note that if you're looking for someone to complete you, you're doomed. We share the power of the gynecologist question. We note that in a relationship, you are 50% of the problem and 100% of the solution. We'll talk about how you may be empowering others to mistreat you. We'll chat about what is as much a destructive habit as smoking, drinking, drugs, and so forth. We'll also talk about what billionaire Warren Buffett says about who you choose as a mate. I'll talk about when I love you does not mean I love you. We'll share what I love you changes for men. We'll bring up the biggest and most harmful lie. And we'll cover what huge advice is on page 1 of the book of being a guy. Lean forward. Take notes.
Lie versus lie. 10 lies women tell men and men tell women. Elizabeth, are you ready?
I am ready. I'm so excited to be on Coach Mobley's show this morning. Thank you for having me.
Oh, no problem. You've made it better already. Okay, so I'm going to let you go first. What's the first lie?
So I would say, let me tell people a little bit about myself and why I even can tell them about lies that women tell themselves or tell men in relationships. My name is Elizabeth Overstreet. I'm a relationship expert. I kind of fell into this accidentally. I grew up in family where my parents were married over 57 years. The marriage was only broken through death. My mom passed recently. And then along with that, I observed lots of aunts and uncles who were married over 40 years. And then I was married in my first marriage for 10 years, and now I am remarried. So I always feel like it's important to share things that you observe from people who have had long, sustainable, healthy relationships. I think people don't want to keep repeating the same mistakes over again. And we can shorten the learning curve. There's a lot of great information out there. There's a lot of anecdotal examples of like what works and what doesn't work. So I'm really about people first developing who they are as their foundation. And I share experiences that I've been through. I don't tell people to do anything that I wouldn't do or that I don't coach my clients to do. So that's my story. But jumping into your question about lies women tell themselves, I would think the first lie that comes to mind is, I want to be married.
Wait a minute. Are you saying, I'm going to make sure I'm clear here. Are you saying that women are lying to themselves or lying to the man when they say, I want to be married?
Yes. So I think sometimes people think of the marriage and they get excited about the prospect of marriage, the wedding and the planning, which I always say the wedding is an event. Marriage is a whole nother factor that happens after the wedding. So there are people that want to be married for the perks of marriage, for the status, so that they can say they have a husband, so that they can, have a certain standard of life sometimes, but they don't want the other parts that come with marriage. And I say that because statistics bear that out, right? 50% of marriages end in divorce. So I think that in order to be married, you have to realize that there's a balance, right? There's definitely pros to being married, but there's cons too. And you have to be willing to compromise. You have to be willing to sometimes put yourself on the back burner for your spouse. You have to be ready not to be appreciated at times, because that's all normal parts of marriage. And so I'm not negating the joys of marriage, because I think those are there too. But sometimes when people say they want to be married and then they actually get married and complain about things I'm talking about that come with marriage as well, I feel like they're kind of fooling themselves.
Wow. Well, I have to ask a question here. Why do you think, you said about 50% or so of people get divorced? In your opinion, based on your experience, people, what are one or two key reasons people get divorced?
I think people, and it's a human factor. I remember watching this on 60 Minutes. We tend to over optimize what life will be, meaning like we think everything will go smooth. We won't hit any road bumps or roadblocks along the way. And when I look at my parents who were married 57 years, and I had grandparents that were married over 60 years, and then aunts and uncles over 40 years, none of them had a perfect marriage. But I think they were willing to deal with the imperfections, right? And they were willing to just see things through and to navigate those roadblocks, because navigating the roadblocks part is what makes the relationship stronger. And you can't see it when you're mired in it, right? Wow. And so I think a lot of people get really frustrated early on, or have different kind of unrealistic views about what it's gonna be. And I think that's what leads to divorce, because you always hear of scenarios where it's like, you guys didn't have a conversation about spirituality and how that might impact your relationship, or you didn't have a conversation about financial goals and how you both see financial goals, or you guys just weren't communicating well. So these were things that people in hindsight see very clearly, but I think you always see predictors too, right? And you go into it kind of blindly.
One thing I've shared with people is that if while you're dating, you are not getting along, don't stick with it. This is my opinion. The dating time period, you have no encumbrances. You're not officially connected. There is no harm, no foul. In other words, this is the time to find out if this person is the right person for me. I think so many people ignore the warning signs that occur while they're dating. Then they get married. And of course, marriage is more intense. It's more structured, all these things that you've talked about. And I think that then leads to the house just burning all the way down. What are your thoughts about that?
I totally agree with you, actually, because...
Hello, friend. I want to invite you to get a free subscription to my Live Your Best Life newsletter. It's fast and easy to do. Just go to CoachMobley.com.
Click on the button you see there, fill out the little form, and you're in. Thanks.
This is the thing. When you are dating, I always say this, that is the best you're going to see someone. They're putting their best foot forward. You're going to see the best parts. So if the best parts aren't that good at that point, then marriage is going to make everything else creep up. And as you and I know, because we have kids, once you have kids, things get even more amplified. Your differences become even more apparent and glaring. And I think that's another reason people end up divorced, because they will bear pain for themselves, but something about our kids, there's an unconditional love and wanting to see and have better for them, which is a natural parent's inclination. So when you see those issues affecting how your kids could be, something about you makes you want to make that decision for your kids. So that's why I never find it shocking when there's a couple that's been having issues and they have a kid and it's kind of quiet for a while and then they divorce, because I feel like there were already things that were stirring before the kid came into the picture.
Absolutely. Okay. I know you're saying, hey, as like all guys, you're stalling your lies out. No, I'm not. I'm going to share. I will say this though. Let me stipulate up front to everyone listening. Here is the secret to the lies men tell women. You think men are just doofuses walking around. You think they don't know what time it is. Here's the real truth. Men are very strategic. They always start with the end in mind. Always. If you understand that, then you'll understand everything I'm going to share with you. Remember, they start with the end in mind. And you can fill in what the end can be at any given time. But just remember, that's the key. And here's my number one lie. And by the way, no particular order, but this is the number one lie I'm going to share with you. We will get along better when we get X, Y, or Z. Right?
Ooh, that's one. Yeah.
There'll be a car, a job, a house, a dog, a backyard, a men's men's castle, little cave, men's cave. Doesn't matter. A ring. It doesn't matter. That when they say we're going to get along better, we'll love each other more, anything, once we get X, game's over. First of all, it's a lie. It's a complete lie. And it's done to sometimes to make the other person shut up and leave me alone. Just shut up and leave me alone. I'm not the problem. Sometimes maybe you're not the problem. But the problem is we don't have this or we don't have that, or we live same thing. We live too close to your parents. We live too far away from your parents. We live here. All those things are all shaping around that lie that something other than the two of us will allow us to get along better.
I totally agree with you. When I was dating before my second marriage, it was very, very clear from my learnings, which is why I really want to help other people out there not to have to go through what I went through, because I didn't always make good decisions. I did not always choose well. But what was very clear is men are very intentional. I agree. When a guy is like ready to settle down and he's telling you, he's giving you so many signs that he is interested in building with you. He's sharing things financially with you because he wants you to know their stability. He's emotionally trying to meet your needs. He's trying to flex and compromise. He's telling you what the end goal is. It's so funny you said that, because I remember that. I remember dating someone saying, I see us getting married in this period of time. This is what I have going on. This is how I would set things up if we were married. And I agree. And if it's short term, it is very much like, well, it's always an excuse, right?
Always.
And what I always tell the women I coach, because I tend to coach women I coach women and men, but the women I coach are very type A. They're very successful. They're very driven, but they have a hard time connecting with men because because the same things that make you successful in the corporate arena are not the same things that often make you successful in a relationship, right?
True.
So I always tell them that don't waste your time. You got to look at this like time. Time is a commodity you can't get back. So 2-3 months, someone's telling you something. 6 months, someone's not changing. 9 months, they're not telling you something. A year, then the next thing you look up, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years have passed, and you're upset, but you've given away your commodity of time.
That's right.
And you're right. Men are very intentional about their time. Which is why I always find it interesting that there's always that one woman. Guys are like, it's the woman that made that guy do that. I'm like, no, it's the guy that decided at that point in time that was the woman he wanted to choose to be, or he was at that point in his life he wanted to choose to settle down.
Exactly.
And it's so clear, in their communication.
100%. All right, I'll shut up now. You're up.
All right. Lie number 2, I don't want to be in a relationship. So I find this one really funny in a way. I don't think everyone does. Okay. So I'll put that disclaimer out there. But usually you're either in a relationship, you're going into one, or you're leaving one. And oftentimes the people who say they don't want to be in a relationship are always seeking a relationship, which is the irony. So I think for people that are saying this lie to themselves that they don't want to be in a relationship, but they actually do, stop psychologically faking yourself out, right? Be honest about what you need. But I also think it's important that you take time and recover. So relationship hopping does not get that recovery that you need. I think, my philosophy around relationships is the first and most important relationship is the one you have with yourself. And if you cannot get that relationship right, you will always have rocky foundations in your other relationships. You will never be able to have a healthy and sustainable relationship because you need to be healthy first with who you are. You need to deal with the common threads of who you attract that have certain dysfunctions, because I do have clients that come to me and they're like, why do I keep attracting a certain type of personality? And I always tell them, you got to put the mirror up. There's something you're not dealing with within yourself that makes you feel comfortable in that unhealthy dynamic. So I think that's a lie that people tell themselves. What have you observed?
I think that you built there to something in that answer that really resonated with me and my experience with people in coaching. And that is, and this is where I take it. I think that everything begins and ends at this question: do you love yourself? I think that, to me, because once a person truly loves who they are, and that doesn't mean they stop improving. That doesn't mean they stop pushing out forward. It means they understand who they are and they're optimizing who they are, because that's the love. I optimize who I am. I'm feeling good about what I'm doing and what I'm going to do. When people don't feel that, for a whole host of reasons, when they don't feel that, you cannot give what you don't have. And I think that love is an interesting place, but many people, many people are seeking, as you say, the appearance of love and the appearance of self-love, because they truly don't love themselves. They're not comfortable with who they are. And so they want to mask it by getting married or not getting, or whatever the case, having kids. I mean, a lot of things.
They think someone can fill the gaps, but I think the most successful relationships is having someone that complements you, not fill your gaps.
Yes.
Because no one can fill your gaps, really. They can offer skills or traits that are complementary to you, but that's almost a losing battle, if you start off with that mindset.
Now, I do believe, to your point, that people can form an effective team. There are some things,
absolutely,
but you're right. Like there can be, for example, I know you have history in Chicago when the Chicago Bulls were in their heyday with Michael Jordan and all that kind of great stuff. Here's the reality: Michael Jordan by himself could not beat an opposing team. He couldn't be.
Nope.
Somebody had to rebound, someone had to pass, someone had to set picks and block out and do all the kind of stuff that has happened. In other words, as you say, they're complementing each other is what they had going on. He had his role and others had their role, and together they were a dynamite team. And I think that's an appropriate way to think about shaping a relationship. Am I forming a team that is designed to win? Or is this team, whatever, we got problems all the way around, and no one does anything that needs to be done to make this team go forward. Or I've teamed up with a person who is not a compliment, who is not make me better. Professor Walter Williams, he's an economist. For those who don't know, an economist, was an economist, passed away recently. Great guy. I had a chance to interview him many years ago, and he said to me, he was joking when he said it, but the point was true. He says, the truth is, one time I was talking, he said, I was talking on stage and I told the audience that if I didn't have a use for my wife, we wouldn't be married. He says, and the reverse is true, that we together complement each other, that we together are really, really effective. So because we're together, we see the value in each other. We see what we do for each other and we love it and we appreciate it. He says, if I had no use for it, there's nothing to appreciate. There's nothing to value. And I thought that was, he told me, I'm not sure I was even married when he told me that. So it was very profound to me, but I found it to be so true in the years since and in all of my coaching of people. Your thoughts?
No, I think that's true. I think that, when I say gaps, I mean like when people are like, well, I'll have better self-esteem if I'm with this person. I'll feel better about myself if I'm with this person. But I agree with you that you can have couples where one person is more detailed oriented, right? And one person is more visionary. And that could be a powerful couple because
Right.
a visionary still needs someone who could pull together the steps. Or you could have a couple where one is very strong with like numbers, right? And then the other is more like, well, good with being creative. You put someone that is good with the numbers, that's kind of like how you may build it. And then the creativity could bring about different ways of what you build together, as a couple. So I absolutely agree with the gaps from that perspective. But I think if it's internal gaps, I think that's when it gets a little, it's harder for that to happen.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. All right. Here's my number 2. Again, everybody note the guy will always stall out until he's ready to talk.
Hello, friend. I want to invite you to get a free subscription to my Live Your Best Life newsletter. It's fast and easy to do. Just go to CoachMobley.com. Click on the button you see there, fill out the little form, and you're in. Thanks.
Here's my number 2. here's my number 2. I will never cheat again.
Ooh,
Big
that's a
lie.
good one.
Big
That's
lie.
good. Yeah.
I don't want to be caught again. And I don't want you to catch me again. I'll cheat better next time. But that is just an outright lie because the step, it's like if you smoke cigarettes, if you like, the ice cream in the evening, whatever you're doing, thing is, those habits, which is what they are very difficult to break. They're extraordinarily difficult to break. And they're a habit that we walked into willingly. Cheating is a willing behavior. It's not like you were kidnapped, they took you off to an island and they said, you must cheat or you die. That didn't happen. You made the decision based on all the data you had, the relationship, you may have with the person that presumably wouldn't, that you have the keen relationship with. Everything at stake, whatever that is, whatever the deal is, you have done the math. The guy has done the math and said, okay, so I know that 5 + 5 = 10. I'm going to throw in the joker here. I'm going to add 1 to this party. I'm going to make 5 + 5, which is 10, look like 11. In other words, I'm going to do something that doesn't add value to my math problem. It makes my math problem wrong, but I'm willing to risk it to get whatever it is I think I'm getting from that. I will never cheat again. Huge lie. Of course you will.
Yeah, it's a character trait, really.
Yes.
Because someone who is unhappy will or is feeling a certain way, they will first try to communicate it through if they're mature. But someone who has a trait of dealing with situations like that, they avoid, and they create other problems, right? So that to me is a character trait. I agree with you.
And sometimes people, guys, and you're right, piercing right to the character nature here. Sometimes these things happen because they are ego boosters, or they can be perceived as an ego boost. Somebody wants me, somebody likes some, whatever the case may be. Let's presume for a second they're getting that sort of attention within their core relationship. Then that even points to a bigger character issue if they feel the need to step outside to do X, Y, and Z. There's a lot of stuff going on, and you mentioned character. There's some psychological stuff. There's a lot of stuff going on in that behavior.
Yes, I agree. And I do understand, like, I think the misnomer could be there are people that may have done it because they just felt a certain way, right? There were some very difficult circumstances they were going through, but there was horrible consequences for the behavior. So sometimes you can have people like that, I think, where they're not serial cheaters, where they understood the impact because they went through a situation where they thought they did it for whatever reason, right? But the consequence was so hard that they had to live with that. And it impacted their relationship. Maybe they lost that relationship, or there was another impact to them cheating. So it made them, they may not do it again because of that.
Once you go down that road, it is hard to pull back.
It's very difficult. It's almost like once you erode trust in a relationship, if you don't have trust, that's a hard, difficult thing to overcome. The relationship is never the same.
Can I touch on that for a second, the trust thing?
Sure. Yes.
I think that eroding trust is equivalent to, you have a fine piece of china, or whatever it is, right? Wonderful, intricate, valuable thing, and you drop it on pavement. I don't give a flying rat's behind how much glue you have. I don't care how much tape you have. It's never going to be like it was. It's never. Trust is one of those things that is so goes to the core of who we are as to give trust and to earn trust. It's so much there that when you break that, I just think that, I don't, you almost, the person would have to be, I think, now you tell me what you think, you and I obviously can differ on this, that person who has had their trust broken would almost have to be insane to ever trust that person again, because that's so deep. It's so that move of trust is just so difficult. I don't. What do you think? Is it possible to?
I agree with you. I think people can recover from it, but I think it involves a lot of therapy and letting go. But I agree. It's like the broken china that you put back together. It's never the same. It erodes the relationship. But I do think there are couples. I think, and it's interesting because you're a male, and I think for males it's incredibly difficult. Like, I think males don't want to overcome it.
Yes,
I think females though there's females I know of who acclimate and deal with it. They don't like it. They're not happy with it. It definitely changes the dynamics. It's different. And so I see two pathways. Women either just are like, I'm done. The women I've coached, I'm done. I can't, or they're just like, I'm gonna try to work through it. And some of them succeed, but like you said, the percentages are very low because it's hard to fit.
Yeah, now you flipped it very nicely. I loved it because it's so true. If a man is cheated on by a woman, that game is over. They may stay together and whatever,
but it's a different thing. It's something mental there. It's
that's right. That's a whole thing that
which feels like a double standard, honestly. But
it is a double standard.
I agree with you. It's something about a guy ego wise is very hard for him to deal with that. And I don't think it's the same man after that. I've seen that scenario too. And the level of love is diminished some. It's different.
That's right.
Yeah.
I've known a lot of people in my life, and friendships, acquaintanceships, and the coaching and that sort of thing. And I can almost, at this point in my life, I would say with pretty good certainty, I can almost point to the people I know for whom that has happened. You can just the way they interact, the entire flow is, you realize, wait a minute, there's a lot of stuff going on here, and there are only a few things that cause that level of this kind of interaction together. Just seeing, we could be out to dinner, it doesn't matter where, but you watch them flow back, and you can tell, no, it's been cracked, and I know which side it's been cracked, because this whole thing is is very, very
different. That dynamic is totally different. It's disrupted, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you want me to tell lie number 3?
Yes, please do.
So lie number 3 is, I do want to be in a relationship. So some people are always talking about it, like, when am I going to find that person? Where are they? I'm looking for them. And they have prerequisites, and I think standards are a good thing to have. Be sure that the things you are asking someone else to bring to the table, that you can bring them too, because sometimes people have lists. And I think, I have a mixed feeling about this. I don't think lists should be, what's the word? Superfluous, meaning like, he has to be 6'3" and he has to, I'm using very like superficial attributes. Like, he has to look this way, he has to drive this car, he has to live here, have this profession. That's superficial. But I think lists, if you're saying, I want someone who has wisdom, or someone who has a sense of humor, or someone who's loyal, I think that's a good list, because I think you're starting to visualize what you want for your partner. And I think that if you first, again, I'm all about foundation. If you are in the right place, I think it just aligns you better to be with someone who can meet the standards that you have. And then I think when you have standards on a certain level, not on a superficial level, but on a level of knowing what you will deal with and what you won't deal with, you won't settle. You're less apt to settle because you know what you want.
Let me ask you a question. My answer to this question is yes, but you might not be as structured as I am on this. When I'm coaching clients, I require them to write down the list of what they want. Is that something you require, or is that not something?
I do. I'm gonna tell you something. So my husband, before I met him, and he laughed about this, but he did the same thing, and I didn't realize he had done the same thing. I put a vision of what my next companion husband would be, and I put things in there like loyal, humble, spiritual, sense of humor, stable, because I'm not unrealistic about that part. I think people could be extreme about financial things, but I think financials are important, because that could be a tension in a relationship. And I put he was going to be, I hoped he would be tall, right? I hoped he would be handsome. I got lucky on those things. But when it was weird, like he also on his end had a vision statement of what his wife looked like.
Okay.
And so I do believe in the power of like you said, making it more real to you, so you know what you like, but also using that list to figure out what's really not real, right? Or really not important. So yes, I do advise my clients to be very very forthright about putting together the attributes they want in a partner. What are deal breakers? It's almost like a business plan for a relationship in a way. You kind of know what you want and what it's going to look like. So when it comes, you're more apt to know the person you should pick or choose.
Elizabeth, you are killing it. Love the insights. Love the insights. All right. Here is lie number 3 that men tell women. No, you don't look fat in that. See, here's
on that rabbit hole. Go ahead.
Remember, men start with the end in mind. And what happens often, this is my belief, women set traps in their questions. Say, there's a trap. Men rarely set traps that are designed to elicit a response that is opposite of what might be reality. Okay? So, like, if you think about it, where do I go here but if I were to answer yes, let's say I'm asked that question, and that was the answer yes. Okay, now let me think. If I'm a guy, what's the outcome? Exactly where does this go?
There's no outcome. And to your point, if a guy is strategic, he knows there's no good outcome there.
No good outcome. No good outcome. No good outcome. And so that is a lie that, and it's one that is, you're put in that spot and you kind of have to make a comment. You have to say, okay, does it look good on me? Does it look fat? By the way, there are many ways to get around. Does this look good on me?
Yeah. My husband's really good at that. He said it's always the way you message it. Like, you're not going to say it's ugly, but you might say you look more attractive when you wear this or this color.
There you go.
So it's like you're answering it, but more indirectly. Yeah.
There you go. That's smooth, very smooth on your husband's part. Very, very smooth.
And when we're telling men, like, do I look fat? We know already that we put on pounds or it doesn't fit the right way. So we are kind of setting them up for failure with that question.
Right. Exactly. And I've always thought, imagine the guy who says, actually, yes, you do look fat in that. Imagine, once again, why would you do that? What are you doing? And, it's just an interesting. So that's one of those questions you're asked that your reflex answer is always, oh, no, not at all. And you're right. Your husband has shrewdly moved to the point of shape-shifting away, right? He's shape-shifting away, and maybe it's different color. I think this color might look better tonight.
Because what's funny is you already know kind of the answer, and when they confirm it, it doesn't make you feel better. So I've learned to not ask that question, because it's like you kind of already know what's happening, and then you're asking for confirmation. So now it's another person reinforcing what you're already feeling. So it's just not a good situation.
That's right. I prefer to leave the department store perfume section for the lies to you. That's what I'm thinking. Let them that's their job. It's that smells good on you or whatever they do. That's their job to lie to you. Mine is, please don't put me in this position. So, but I will lie willingly. If I'm a guy, you must lie willingly with a smile and as convincing as possible. Absolutely.
There's some good actors out there. There's some good husbands and
absolutely
that are good actors.
Absolutely.
So, lie number 4 is I want to have kids. And so I do some people do really want to have kids, but there are some women that are so goal oriented that they see the kid is a goal. And
Mm,
so they say things like, well, if I have this kid, it's going to give me purpose. If I have this kid, it's going to make me happy. And if you notice, those are all me statements. It's not
yeah.
about the kid. I
Mm,
think when you have a kid, you have to understand they're going to have very specific personalities. You're going to pour into them, but they have free will. So a lot of times our kids, when you have children, you guide them, you instill the right things in them, but at the end of the day, the kid makes the decision about what they're going to do. And
hmm
so I always say, like, spoiler alert, having another human can't be attributed to achieving another goal,
Right.
specifically your goal. But as far as building a legacy, wanting to contribute to society, raising the productive member of society, I think those are positive reasons to have kids. But I think if you look at having a kid as another thing to check off your list or as a goal to achieve, that's the wrong vantage point. So I
hmm
think people that say they want to have kids for the me reasons, ultimately that is not, the right reason.
hmm You know, I very strong. I mean, very, very strong. There's so much stuff that comes with the kids, and I like the way that you kind of set things out, understanding what not only what they're lying about, they being women in this case are lying about, but the why they're lying. You're right, as a something to check off, something on my to-do list, as opposed to what comes with that. Because when you buy into a kid or anything you buy into, you're buying into the full package. There's a lot that comes with that kid. There's a lot that comes with the time, as you said, time you can't get back. You have to devote time to that child. You make decisions based on that child or children. All those things come. So the notion of wanting to have kids is about much, much more than I've got a kid, so I've checked that box off. Very, very good of you. Very good. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you said earlier that, a majority of the women, of the people that you coach are female. Is that correct?
The majority of female,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. And what's interesting about it, because actually the majority of folks that I coach as a life and as an executive coach, the majority of people I coach also happen to be female, but I always come at it from the vantage point. Like played on teams all my earlier life. Went to West Point with a lot of guys. Was in the Army, a lot of guys. And so I've always known, and I've told I have daughters as well. I've told the daughter said, I know guys. Guys I know. I was always that kid who was kind of observing what everyone was doing. And so I got a chance to see people do these things. And you're right about your perspective and how they're engaging with women and how women engage with them is so on point. I just want to tell you, I'm thrilled that we decided to do this live versus live little get together here between the two of us, because I think we're bringing together the best of the perspectives coming from men and women and how they engage with each other. So I want to thank you midway here. I want to thank you for what you've
Oh,
done
thank
already.
you. Thank you for having me, because I'm enjoying it too. And I, as even though I coach people about relationships, I always learn too. So I'm learning as we're having this dialogue too from you. So thank you for having me.
No problem. Here's my lie that men tell women number 4. Normally, this happens pre-marriage. Pre-marriage. It could be early in the dating time or later, but it happens pre-marriage. It is this: we don't have to have sex. We can just cuddle. That is a lie.
That's like
That's
the let me give you a massage trick. But go
that's
ahead.
exactly that's an absolute lie. No, we can just cuddle. I remember, and now I'm going to reveal something. So one pre-marriage, pre-dating, I happened to be at a card game with a group of fellow workers. We were all young professionals. It was like on a Friday night or Saturday night. Somebody throwing some party, and a card game broke out. A card game, spades broke out. The card game of spades. Okay, so I'm sitting down. Spades. You have a partner. You're sitting across from people. And I remember there happened to be the table was surrounded by men and women, and it happened to have 2 women at the table and 2 guys, and just we didn't really know each other. We knew of each other, didn't know each other. So people have been drinking, having a good time. Okay, so we're playing spades. One of the women brings up the topic of something about cuddling or something like that, and I again didn't know her. And by the way, she will undoubtedly hear this because she is one of the folks that subscribes to my newsletter and stuff. She is a very prominent, well-known business figure. So we're going back in time. In fact, both of these women are. So we're going back in time. So one woman says something about guys and whatever, I don't know, some guys and and cuddling, and I just but whatever she was saying, somehow it came up. There was a lot of chatter around the table, so people just talking smack, saying about cuddling, and I would only cuddle with a guy, blah blah blah. So I looked at her again, didn't know her, met her at this, didn't know her, didn't know anything about her. I looked at her and said, there is no. This is a younger me, everyone. I said, there is no way that any self-respecting guy is going to just roll up with you and just sit there and cuddle for some senseless movie about whatever. It was like some rom-com movie. I said, that's not what they're thinking. No, I think, she's telling me what guys think.
Hello, friend. I want to invite you to get a free subscription to my Live Your Best Life newsletter. It's fast and easy to do. Just go to CoachMobley.com. Click on the button you see there, fill out the little form, and you're in. Thanks.
I said, yeah, okay, I'm going to tell you again right now. There is no way. So we went back and forth. Then it turned into a party-wide discussion. I said, I'm going to tell you right now, let's have a blind vote. Blind vote. I said, everybody, you can get a piece of paper. And do you think that a guy just wants to sit there and cuddle? And there were a lot of women, and probably I think more women than men at this party, but there was a big party. So everybody wrote a piece of paper, put them into this bottle, and we counted out. And I think there were if there were 40 people, 2 said yes, the men would just want to cuddle. I mean, it was because it was reality. Because guys are cuddle. What are you talking about? I can remember, guys are focused. They start with the end in mind. So the cuddle is just a mask.
It's a way to get in.
It's a way to get in. Is this you start with the massage? Okay, like a woman says massage, game is over. Game's over.
Game over. Massage is sex. Massage is to intimacy. That massage is with the goal of intimacy.
That's right. Exactly.
And some of these insights I have too because I have brothers, so I forgot to mention that.
Oh my goodness! And do your brothers are they honest with you and that, or you just know?
Oh my God! Like sometimes too honest. So I was a tomboy because I was with my brothers longer before my sisters came into the picture, before they were born. So it's just like I just am used to listening. Like you, I was always listening and observing conversation in the games. I should say, well, the games that the men play sometimes. Right. So guys always joke with me. They're like, "You're like a man in your thoughts," because I kind of understand how they're thinking.
Right. Perfect. I mean, that was it. That's we can just cuddle. Get out of here with that.
Exactly. So I would say lie number 5 that I hear a lot of women say is, I want a successful man. I think this is a good one. And I often say, do you? Because women will say, I want a successful man, because I think they look at it from one perspective of what that type of man will bring to their life. But I don't think they understand sometimes if you are dating a highly successful man, that there could be missed dates, missed anniversaries. There's a trade-off, especially if they have a business venture they're building or they have built, right? They people who are highly successful that I've dated in the past, I mean, really highly successful, like just they have their own business ventures and things going. A lot of times they have to prioritize that at times because that's real life for them. That's how they function, especially entrepreneurs. So I always say to women, because you hear some women complain once they get the successful man, he's never here. He doesn't spend time with me. Why can't he do this? So it's a trade-off. So I just say it's okay to want someone that's successful. I think you should aspire to have someone who can, you could level up with, or who can increase your learning around business and business ventures and entrepreneurship. But be prepared that there are trade-offs with that type of dynamic as well.
Absolutely.
What have you seen?
I think you're right. You mentioned entrepreneurship. We can talk about the corporate world, this working. There are demands. There are only 24 hours in a day for everyone. That's it. 24 hours. And you take out the time you sleep, and then you say, okay, what do we have left? And you look at that time, and success is about properly apportioning your time to the things that are most important for you. Because if you don't do that, if it's kids, if it's this, you've got to put in the time to take it from level 1 to level 2 and on upward. And the same in business. If it takes time, and you mentioned entrepreneurship, those problems you sleep with. When I was in the corporate world and doing the corporate, executive stuff, I I very rarely took home problems because there were all these experts doing all the other stuff in sales and research, and they were doing everything. Once you become an entrepreneur, then all of it ends up at your desk. And you can't just let it doesn't just go away. And people problems and the demands are huge. And so to understand what that means, if you are the spouse of this person or soon to be the spouse of the person, is really important. I think people, especially entrepreneurs, if you marry an entrepreneurial type, engage with entrepreneurial type, male or female, and that's who they are, like that's their thing, they're never going to give that up. That's who they are. It's part of what makes them special, on this planet. That this is what they do. And
it's part of their DNA. Yeah,
exactly,
it's part of their DNA.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so,
if you try to disrupt it, it creates like havoc because that's
exactly.
just who they are.
That's exactly. Yeah. That's 100% right. So that's my perspective on it. Let me perspective on it. All right.
And not to go too much on the sideline of it, but I was just going to say, like, when men are building legacy specifically, because I think men go through different periods of life, and that's a whole nother show. But when they're really working to build their legacy, and if they can't see you as part of that legacy, or if they see you interfering with that legacy, it doesn't work. So a lot of times when men are building businesses, it's with the goal of setting up their families, their significant other, building that legacy for their future. And so it's a different mindset of dating or being with someone, at that caliber. It's just something I want to put out there. Okay.
I remember.
I'll shut up now.
No. I'm gonna personalize this because I think it's important to. I'm gonna drive a stake in this thing. Maybe when I met the woman who was going to become my wife, I met her parents at some point in the process. And her parents were the type who got a job, stayed in the job, would stay in a job to the end of time, and then retire and, do other things, which is great. That's a great way to do it. That's what they do. Even though I was in the corporate world at the time, that's not me. That wasn't me. And that was not the way it's going to be. But that was how the woman who became my wife, that's how she had been acclimated, raised. I mean, that was the culture she was in. And so that degree of stability of you go to an office, you drive back. You go to an office, that was what she knew. And you do it for 30 or 40 years, and then, you retire and you do whatever you do at that point. I remember us having a series of very good conversations about, despite my background, which might imply that's what I would do, I had to let her know that's not who I am. We actually had great conversations about, is this the kind of approach that you can buy into? Are you down with this? Because this is what this means. I love conversation. I love sharing with people. And my belief is that if I share with you something that's not cool with you, that's okay. In some cases, you should move on. I should move on. Because as you said, it's in the DNA. And if you try to disrupt that DNA, you destroy the person and they will hate you. They will hate you forever.
They will. Yeah. They feel like you're killing their dream. And so I think you got to be either on board with the dream and see, especially if it's someone that showed like track record, of success, or they're just so determined to get there. Sometimes people have a vision that others can't see. They just don't see it,
Absolutely.
So, absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Lie number 5 that men tell women: I don't look at other women.
Yeah.
I always say, how do you think he found you? Did he suddenly go blind? No sense of taste or smell? How did he find you? I say he found you, if you just play with me on this one for a second, he found you by sifting, selecting. So, okay, this kind of, shaking the dust off this and saying, okay, yes, no, a lot of no's. And then finally, yes, this one. So he was an observer of people. That doesn't mean that this is an excuse for, I have a person I know who has been caught many times by his significant other ogling other women. Of course, that's a problem. That's a problem.
Yeah, that's a problem. Yeah.
That's a problem, okay? That is a problem. And I have said repeatedly, that is a big problem. The one thing's for sure, the lie, there's a woman where? I didn't see anybody. That stuff is good. And you may hear it. By the way, that could be one of those good lies to tell. But the point is, it's really not true. If you don't care about looks and you don't care about the way a woman presents herself, then what was I? Just I fall off the turnip truck here, so as a woman. So
Hey, I take it up a notch. Like I kind of like knowing what my guy's type of woman is that he would be attracted to.
mm-hmm.
And I kind of, I will joke about it because I think we're human. Like,
yeah.
just because you see someone that's attractive, I mean, that's normal. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you're not acting on it. If you're not disrespectful, if you're not oogling them, that's
Mm-hmm.
fine. Because my husband and I were watching a iHeartRadio performance show, and some
Mm-hmm.
singer came on, and I saw his reaction. I said, that's interesting. And I said, you like her, huh? And he was like, no, he was denying it. I said, it's okay. Like, it's human. She's a really attractive woman. So I think when you empower yourself as a woman to kind of look at it that way, as long as it's not disrespectful, it kind of gives you insight into your relationship, I think, too.
Mm-hmm.
And it could give you ideas to keep your relationship spicy. So I feel like, a lot of times we get some people want to control, right, every narrative. And that doesn't make the relationship more empowered, right? But I think you empower yourself when you recognize certain things and you're realistic about certain things. But yeah, that lie I knew for a fact because I have brothers.
Exactly. There you go. That's it.
Yeah. Okay, so lie number 6, I think that women tell themselves is, I could be everything to myself. No, you can't. So I want people to bear with me as I explain this. We can be pretty good in our own right as individuals, but there is a reason we have family, friends, and significant others. When you have these other dynamics of people around you, and I'm not saying you have to be in a relationship to be everything. That's not what I'm saying. But I think when you have scenarios where you have other people in your life, they make you grow, they make you evolve, they make you develop. We talked about kids earlier. It's like raising kids takes you through the different changes they go through as well, but you evolve so much through the process as a parent, which is why being a first-time parent is so different than being a second-time parent or a third-time parent, because you're taking all these collective experiences, right? And you're changing, you're growing, you're using them, you're becoming more wise because of these experiences. So I do think you can't be everything to yourself. It's limited. And I think, romantic relationships and non-romantic relationships really help us grow and develop because people put the mirror on us, right? And they tell us things that we may not want to recognize or see in ourselves. And that could be growth because sometimes you're just too close to yourself to see everything. And that applies to all of us, women or men. So
That's 100% correct. I mean, I agree with you 100%. We all come to this space in relationships, in business, and life through our own unique journeys. We learn things along that you mentioned about having a second kid and a third kid. You learn what matters and what doesn't matter. And it's great to have that input in your life because it makes the venture, the relationship, whatever it is, it makes it better, more likely to succeed. What it presupposes is a willingness to change, a willingness to have your ideas evaluated, if not challenged at times. That's a positive because part of self-love is believing that I can be better, I can learn more, I can engage more, this team can be more effective, those sorts of things.
And I agree with you. Like self-love is self-accountability, right? So self-love is not just loving the great parts of yourself. Self-love is also looking at the dark parts or the parts that are broken or the parts that need to be improved and working on those. That's holding yourself accountable. That is part of self-love because we hear a lot of self-love mantras out here, right? But sometimes what people don't want to delve into is the parts of themselves that they need to work on. And I think it's hard for people because working on yourself is continuous. It's a lifelong endeavor because we're imperfect humans.
Yes. Very, very strong. Love that. Love it. The willingness to change, being flexible enough to understand that I've not yet reached perfection. All right. Lie number 6 that men tell women. No, I listen to everything you say.
I know that one's a lie.
No, we don't. Get out of here. To be thoroughly offensive to everybody listening, perhaps. It would drive men crazy if they absorbed and listened to everything you say. Crazy.
I get it. I think that, just not to stereotype, but women are just more verbose. They just use more words to say things. And even in my corporate experiences and in being in business, men seem to be a little more finite with their words. And there are some guys that are communicative. I've met and coached and interacted with guys like that. But women, there's a lot going on in our minds, right? And a lot of things I think women are thinking about, and men are they seem more single task focused, And so that what you're saying makes sense to me.
So remember, men start with the end in mind. So if a conversation is like floating into nothingness.
Well, men also want to naturally solve. So like if you're having a conversation and there's not really a way to solve through it, to your point, starting with the end in mind, it's kind of like, why are we talking about this? Is this something to solve? Okay, this is superfluous to me. This is not I don't get this. This is frivolous conversation. So it's a mindset thing. Whereas women a lot of times could just be talking to talk it out. Then that's exhausting exercise. They're like, why are you talking out? This and this. So that communication thing is so interesting to me. But,
that is so. Guys are like, this is making no sense. I'm out. I'm
done. I'm going to watch the game. That I understand. I know there's an end goal. Someone's going to win. Someone's going to lose. Someone's going to score touchdowns.
Men start with the end in mind. I mean, that's the core. And you can control men. You have an understanding, Elizabeth. You understand. Okay, I can massage, maneuver, manipulate. Not a bad word, manipulate this relationship, because I understand what he's thinking, or how he thinks, rather. I understand the process he's going through. I know what his next steps are going to be in this thought process. So let me now, adjust to that to get what I want.
I know what you're saying. Like I don't manipulate in my relationship. Like I'm human, like everyone else listening. And so there's definitely shortcomings because again, I'm too close to myself to see certain things. But as I'm going through being remarried again, and we're like in the newlywed period, I am learning a lot again. I things I've forgotten, because I wasn't married for 18 years. I had a nice like break of being single, dating, and so forth. And so like now I'm like, oh, okay, my husband's style is this, he has to receive information this way. Okay, he processes information this way. It's all very interesting, but I think if you can master these different ways of communicating with your, significant other, and I tell the women that I coach, I'm like, if you just want a guy to listen, you need to start the conversation with, I'm just kind of venting. I'm not looking for you to solve this. I just kind of want to get this off my chest. I'm thinking it through, because a lot of times people know the solution and they know they need to take action, but they just kind of want to talk it through for their own sanity, just to see how it sounds.
Right.
Have a sounding board.
Offending alert. Be ready to be offended. Okay. I know you're all out there.
Alert before you offend. I'm going to use that.
I know they're all out there. Here's my thing. Any guy who processes life like a woman is completely off the rails. And he's caught between and betwixt worlds. Guys always know guys like that. Life does not reward the man who processes life like a woman.
That makes sense, because those type of guys typically have more female relationships for that reason. Because the female understands how they're processing it, because they're processing it similarly to how a female would process it.
Yes.
And sometimes women who have more relationships with men, same thing, right?
Yes.
The way they kind of see the world, the way they kind of operate is more masculine. And I hate to put terms on it, but I'm just differentiating. So I totally get that. That's a really interesting statement.
All right. You're up, representing all women everywhere.
Yeah, no pressure on that one. So sorry, women, if I've offended, because I'm going to get feedback on this stuff. But anyway, I'm going to keep going.
There you go.
Number 7 is I am looking for someone to complete me. So I think this is the problem with relationships, is that there are a lot of incomplete people connecting with other incomplete people, and it still doesn't add up to a whole person.
Okay.
So you have gaps from the start. So again, as I always say, the foundation is you. Part of who you attract is who you are. And understand that we're all human. We all have flaws. We're all imperfect. If you are looking for someone to complete yourself, you're already starting and you're doomed, in my opinion. Now, some people will say, I met someone when I was broken. They helped me, blah, 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 blah. I mean, that can work to some degree, but over time, that usually wears one person out if that person continues to be broken. And so I think it's a temporary relationship. But I think if you want a sustainable, long-lasting relationship, that you need to come to the relationship whole, and you need to look for someone who is whole. I mean, that's my opinion. And that's what I've observed. The relationships that tend to last are people who are, it's not that they're perfect. They have flaws, but they know who they are. They know what's important to them. They know what their deal breakers are. They have certain standards, and they kind of align with the other person based on that. It's mutual, it's mutual effort. It's mutual mutually beneficial for both parties. But when it's lopsided, it's draining usually for one party. And a lot of times it's not sustainable over time.
You mentioned something that is a bit astray from where we're going with this, but I have to ask the question because I find it interesting. Do you think, this is a question I'm putting to Elizabeth Overstreet, here we go. Do you think a broken person can enter a relationship and become unbroken, if you will? Is it possible? Have you seen it?
I have seen it. I just think it requires a lot of effort, from the other party. And some people are okay with that. So I think it happens. I just think it's better to start with a full deck of cards versus a half a deck of cards.
Yeah. Ooh, full deck.
That's just my opinion. And so I'm doing the offender alert too, because like I said, I will meet people and I've coached people where they're like, well, I was broken and they helped me. So I think that happens. But usually that other party, what they don't hear or may not know is how that impacted that other party who did all that helping and coaching and getting them to that point. And maybe it did work out in the end and that person, they were able to pull them together, because I do think there is power in some couples being able to motivate and push one another. Yes. But I think when it's unilaterally like unbalanced or unilateral relationship, I think that could be, I just don't know how sustainable that is, consistently. I think there is always exceptions to the rules, but I just think that's a hard way to start a relationship.
Yeah, I 100% agree. All right, lie number 7 that men tell women: I love your friends.
That comes out of the relationship is cemented. Go ahead.
That's right. No, they don't. No, they did. Like if they put up with them, but they're not. Here's the thing. Imagine the guy. I want everybody out there who's offended, which there should be many of you. Imagine the guy who just loves hanging out with your friends. Who would that be? What kind of crazy alternate universe would that be? And would have got, you know what? Nothing better for me, hanging out with you and your friends. No.
Yeah, a woman knows if she tells a guy she doesn't like his friends, that it immediately is going to disrupt that relationship, because men are loyal to a fault to their friends.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. But you're right. Like sometimes she may, but then sometimes it's like she's just putting up with it. Right.
That's right.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Guys tend to not have friends who fly in and out of their lives. So usually, if you meet a guy who's 35, 45, 50, whatever the age is, most of his core male friends were instigated in his college to early 20 years. I mean, they were there since the beginning. So he knows them. If you know somebody when they're 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 25, 27, you know them. There's no hidden thing. Oh, I didn't know that he was the type of guy who would sleep around with his wife. Yeah, you did, because you remember the guy in college. Oh, yeah, that's a good point. I didn't know that he liked to drink. Yes, you did. I mean, it's all there. And so they get very comfortable and they learn how to manage that relationship with that person, because I don't want to say they accept them as they are, but they know them for who they are, and there's comfort. Guys, it happens. Rare does a guy meet a guy at the age of, say, 35, and that guy becomes a great friend.
That's true. It's usually a bond or a history there.
That's right.
And commonality. So like if a guy is around someone, because I've had that happen where you're dating someone and they're like, oh, and you just, like I said, I have a mind like a man and a woman. So I remember dating this guy and I said, oh, your friend, he was married. I said, he's a player. He's like, how do you know? I said, there's just something I'm picking up on. But then in my mind, I think women need to assess, is the guy you're dating similar? Because if there's a long lasting friendship there, and that's what started going through my mind next, that there's some of that on the other side too. Usually there's coverage going on, right? So like-minded attracts like-minded. So that's another thing I would add to that.
Yeah, I've never been asked, but if I was put under the hot lights and the electrodes were hooked up, and there was all kind of, you say the wrong answer, you get shocked. The right answer, you get a cookie or something. If they went through exactly, they went through each of my friends and said, okay, this guy, do you think, if you had to bet yes or no, does he not play around? I can say with great surety that if asked and if required to say, that I would confidently answer for each and every one of my male friends. I'm going to go on record as saying I would be shocked if I were wrong on any of them. Shocked. Just shocked. because you know, like you said, guys are guys around guys. I mean, when else you gonna be a guy? Yeah, guys are guys. So you knew the guy. Yeah, you knew. Again, this friend may indeed hear this. He's a great guy, and let's just say that we were very close in college, and he cycled through a number of marriages. But when we were in college together, he was always cycling through a number of women. It's the same thing. Decades later, the same process is playing out. So I'm not shocked. Wait, really? He's married again? Doesn't surprise me. Why would I be surprised? This is who he is, who he's always been. And I'm not saying people can't change. If you ask me, would you have him date your sister? Well, no, that's not going to happen.
No, right. That's a good one to ask, guys. Would you?
That's right.
You
that's
give you insight into the quality of his friend.
That's it. If you ask, you just very good. Okay, everyone out there. Okay, this is right. Super insight alert. If you want to know, ask the guy. Okay, this friend of yours. Yeah. Would he date your sister, your real sister, your imaginary, whatever? Would you have him date your sister? Would you say, go ahead and date my sister? If the guy hesitates in the least, first of all, there's a reason. And it may be because his friend is a loser who doesn't do anything well and blah, 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 blah. Normally, it has to do with that guy's sense of how this guy would be in a specific relationship. Would he treat the woman well? And if there's any hesitation, that is the absolute, you're right, Elizabeth, that's the drop dead. If they say, yeah, no, that's not going to happen.
Yep. Guys are protective about their sister, so right. It's kind of it's interesting.
Right. Okay,
but I do respect the loyalty bond guys have, but that's another deal too. We need to talk about that.
Here's another way you want to understand a guy's friends. Okay, in a certain way. Here's what you ask a guy. So your friend, Danny or whatever. Yes, Danny. Great. Let me ask you a question. On a scale of 1 to 10, that would be perfect for him, or not so much. You really don't think that should be what should happen. Should Danny be a gynecologist? Okay, because that's another way of getting to would you have him date your sister? If he looks and laughs, no, you don't want Danny to be a gynecologist. That means his history with the guy, he knows. Wait a minute, right. What are you talking about? There you go. Those are two of my super insight alerts. You put those out there, and the truth will always fall out. Always.
Okay, so lie number 8. That women tell themselves, it's them, not me. Okay, so I can see how, number one, people may think that way. And I think there are instances in which there's one person who may create, difficult or, there's some scenarios that happen in relationships.
Mm-hmm.
But I love this one quote, which I think sums this up. In a relationship, you're 50% of the problem and 100% of the solution. So, as people go through different relationships and women I coach, they'll be like, I can't find anyone and they're not out there and blah, 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 blah. And so I'll kind of take them through a succession of questions and I'll kind of ask them, well, who's the common denominator in the relationship? Mm-hmm. So if you're the common denominator in 3, 4, 5, 6 relationships and each of those relationships have ended, and each time you're saying it's the other person, there's something that you're missing about yourself, because no matter what type of relationship, you are still 50% of the relationship. Mm-hmm. And being 100% of the solution means that you can make decisions, right, to leave an unhealthy relationship or not to engage in certain types of relationships.
Right.
But people don't always recognize that 50%, 100% equation. So it's both parties, that are part of the problem. And if you can't acknowledge that on some level, then you're going to have a hard time finding a relationship.
Absolutely. I'm going to tell you something now. This is 100% true. Elizabeth, you and I did not share our lies beforehand at all, correct?
Nope, we did not.
Okay, so I'm going to share with you lie number 8 that guys tell women. And I want to give an example in my life which fits in what you just said after this. Here's what my number 8 is. It's not you, it's me.
Okay.
By saying it, I don't have to argue about her and try to prove. I can just say it's me. I got to fix whatever they say. It's all a complete bunch of balderdash, a complete lie.
I'll use myself as an example. There was someone I was dating, and I remember I have a long-term friend. We've been friends 20 years, so we've seen each other grow through everything. And he's a male friend of mine. Mm-hmm. And he said, "You're the problem," because I just was repeatedly complaining about things. Mm-hmm. I said, "I'm the problem," and it really messed me up. I was like, "What do you mean I'm the problem?" And he said, "You'll figure it out. You're smart enough to figure it out." And he wouldn't tell me for a while, right? And then I
Mm-hmm.
did start to process it, and I was like, oh, I am the problem, because, and I went back to him, I said, what you're saying is I'm allowing it to happen to me. And he said, yeah, so you're the problem. It's not the other person, it's you, because you're giving power, you're empowering them to treat you this way or act this way with you.
Mm-hmm.
And once I had that clarity, I totally got that quote about, you're 50% of the problem and 100% of the solution. Often we choose, and I use myself as an example too, because I didn't always choose the right guys. There were nice guys around.
Sure.
But I was choosing the guy that really wasn't the nice guy for me, and meaning like maybe they weren't emotionally available. They weren't looking to be in a committed relationship, but then having frustration when they wouldn't commit. Or they weren't available emotionally. So you can't have it both ways. And to your point, there's some people that just want to be the victim. And self-love is not about being the victim. Self-love is about you getting to a point where you empower yourself, right? That you are accountable to your decisions, and you recognize the cycle that you're creating that's creating this dynamic of you being in certain relationships and you choosing to stay in those relationships versus leaving them. So that's an accountability piece. That's the whole thing I talk about, which is there's a foundational piece lacking. There's something internal churning in you that's saying, maybe I'm not worthy of this, or I don't deserve this. And that needs to be fixed before you can be in a good relationship.
Yes, 100%. Wanting to be a victim is as much, again, a habit as smoking, as drinking, as drugs. And you stick with it and you stay with it. And, and
it rewards you because it makes you feel good. People empathize with you.
That's
oh
right.
My God, poor
That's
you.
Right. That's right.
You get attention for it, right?
That's right.
But to me, there's so much more power if you can empower yourself to know what you deserve and to be strong in who you are. I mean, that's something that no one can strip away from you. And we have so many examples of people pulling themselves out of the worst scenarios, right? Where they didn't have a penny to their name, but they left an abusive relationship. And I think sometimes, like, where it's very black and white, where you're with someone that has a drug addiction or they are abusive, it's easier to classify those as toxic relationships, but there's a lot of gray in toxic relationships too, right? Where people are verbally abusive, where they're not emotionally, available to you. So I think once you get strong with yourself, that's why I really preach the self-love, self-accountability piece. It becomes very difficult. It's not that you won't attract jerks or people that aren't good for you, but you will start to repel them in a sense, or you won't tolerate, because you will understand your value. It's a different game, some none. Like you will just look at the whole thing differently. So when someone comes in and they lack those characteristics, and say you built your list of attributes of what you want, and you know what you bring to the table, you're like, wait a minute, why am I wasting time here? Exactly. And you're able to walk away with it, with a clear mind, clear conscience.
Exactly. 100%. I think to love yourself and to love who you can become, you have to revere time. And how you spend your time is perhaps the most important thing to you. Maybe what's important is not the person, but that you choose to spend time with that person. That is to me, that's it. That's the deal. I talk about the neighbor, seems like a nice guy. When I see him spend as much of his day in the cabin working on whatever he's working on, I don't know what it is, and not with his significant other, then I understand they may both have become comfortable with that relationship. That's their business. I'm not in that stuff.
Right.
But what I am saying is that how he's spending his time tells me who he values, what he values, and what value he thinks he's getting from the other person.
That's very interesting. That's a good point. Yeah. Which is why it's so important. This is why I'm so hyper passionate about this. It's so important you choose the right person. Yeah. I don't think, like, a lot of times that it's that relationships, and we'll get into this one, are difficult. I think is we choose difficult relationship dynamics. And so we don't, I think if we put as much effort as we do into, like, pursuing our careers, like when you're pursuing a career and you're going to school, you're very intentional. I want to go to this school because they have this program. Okay, I'm going to go to this school to network with certain people that can launch me into these business ventures. Right. Okay, I'm going to get this certification so I can do this specific thing. But then when it comes to our relationships, we're kind of lackadaisical, like, well, I'll find someone and okay, it'll work out. And we kind of will let things go. But your relationship, and Warren Buffett talks about this all the time. He's like, there's a couple of decisions you can make, like 2 decisions that are, like, so important to your life and where you land in life. And he always lists who you choose for your relationship in that number 1 or number 2 position, because they're going to affect you emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically. So if you're not choosing correctly, it has this domino effect on these other parts of your life, which is why I tell people they need to be very intentional about how they choose the person they're going to spend their life with.
Yes. That's be intentional about everything in life. That's be very intentional about everything in life, because things in life are simply a manifestation of time.
Totally.
And so use your time every moment
wisely,
very wisely. So, all right. Sorry I derailed us there.
No, you're okay. We're narrowing it down, guys. We know we're getting into it. I could talk about this stuff for hours. So I love talking about relationship dynamics. Number 9 is I have no bad habits.
Okay.
So as I said earlier, the hardest part of being humans, I think, is realizing that, we're imperfect, that the growth personally is ongoing. Everyone has bad habits. And it never stops, ever, ever, ever. There's just things we're good at that we lean into because we're good at them. And there's things that are deficits for us, right? That sometimes we never will be great at them, but I think just having self-awareness around them is a starting point. So when I hear people make this statement, I realize that they are really limiting their perspective on things. Like, there's always room for you to grow as a person. There's always room to grow in the way you have a relationship with someone that you care about. I don't care if you've been married 2 days, 6 months, 5 years, 50 years. There's always ways to get better. And that's one of the things I observed, like with my parents, like as their marriage matured and went through different stages, there were just little simple things my dad started picking up on, probably through the experiences of hearing my mom say, I don't like that you didn't do this, right? And I remember this one anniversary gift he got her. It was very simple. It was like a card, but it was a very intricate card. And it had a picture of them, when they had did this one dinner together that was obviously a really big event for them. And he wrote a very personalized message to her. And my mother loved that card. Like, she talked about that card ad nauseum, because probably her love language was like gifts, because the gift to her was more about, how do you feel about me? How are you expressing that you love me? And so I think when people say I have no bad habits, my parents were married, again, 57 years, but it took my dad a lot of years to get this kind of card that had this impact. But that's being open to constantly improving, right? And recognizing something that may make someone happy, or that they need in the relationship, and trying to serve that need.
100% true. All right. Lie number 9 that men tell women they're in a relationship with. This might be the ultimate lie that is told. I will say that it is told relatively infrequently because of the power of the words, but it is told because outcome in mind, and also because of ignorance. And here's what it is. I love you. To me, let me deal with the one side of that coin of the statement, I love you. First of all, in order to truly love someone, beyond all the things you have to be about inside, I don't think you can love someone and not love yourself. That's number 1. Number 2, I think it's important to know what I love you means. How does that play itself out? What does that mean? When you love somebody, most often what it means, especially pre-marriage, is I lust you. So it doesn't mean I love you. I love you, though those words are so powerful. That's one reason it's really infrequently said, and people know it's the third rail of statements. If you say that, the relationship has taken, I know from guys' perspective, has taken
a totally different
turn, right?
Right.
So they rarely say it, but even when it's said, it oftentimes is said without a full understanding of what that means, how that is shown, how it's activated, how it's manifested, how it becomes, how it evolves. I love you. Powerful word. If somebody says, I love you, I want them to tell me, what does that mean to you? What do I do then when I love you? To truly love somebody, it changes how you as a man process the world. It changes how you behave every day. It changes what's important to you. It changes how you plan. Remember I said begin with the end in mind. It changes what the end should be if you love somebody. But most often people say the word, men say the word, I think maybe women as well, men say the word without an understanding of what the end is that is productive and positive for the relationship.
Yes, I agree with you. You know, love is like Rome. It's not built in a day
Mm-hmm.
or a
Mm-hmm.
month. It takes years to cultivate. It comes through really, I think, going through some challenging moments, right? Being
Yes.
challenged as a couple to really understand the true meaning of love.
Yes.
But I think on the onset, that's a good way to compare it. It is like, I lust for you because it's like, I want this thing so
Right.
badly. And we
Right.
have so many biblical examples, right? Of how David wanted Bathsheba so badly. Like
Mm-hmm.
he lusted for that woman, but still that marriage over time, it didn't sustain itself, right? Because
That's right.
other factors come into play. So I think that's a really good way, yeah, to say that, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Give me food for thought.
There you
Um,
go.
so lie number 10, we are narrowing it down. We're down to the final one.
Yes.
Relationships are hard. So
Okay.
I think a funny quote about this is one I saw this recently. It said, relationships are like a walk in the park, Jurassic Park. So for anyone who's seen Jurassic Park, it started
Yes.
off really great. They're in this park with dinosaurs, and then
That's
it got kind of crazy in
Yes.
moments, but then it reconciles itself. So I think that, you know, relationships can be hard, but sometimes we're the culprits that make it more difficult than they need to be. And that's why I think it's so important that you choose wisely. But I also think it's important to recognize that, and you talked about this just a moment ago with love, relationships need time. You know, it's like a plant. It doesn't come out the ground right away. You plant the seeds, you fertilize it, you keep giving it water, you keep nourishing it, and then all of a sudden it grows. You know, trees don't start as big, wide, large trees. They grow over many, many years. And I think relationships are like that. And sometimes those trees get weathered, right? Sometimes storms
Yep.
come out and knock out branches, and the
Yep.
tree kind of has to regrow in a
Yep.
way.
Yep.
And I think relationships are a lot like that. They have to find, you have to find a rhythm. There's periods of readjustment. There's things that happen in life that change the dynamics of relationships. And I think what happens a lot of times, I was reading or watching a video actually about a couple who had been married 80 years. I mean, I can't imagine being with someone almost a century,
Right.
but
Wow.
80 years. And they asked them what was the key. They didn't tell like a whole list of things. They just said, we try to find the good in one another and we focused on it. So I think when you go through those hard times, what can easily happen to any relationship is you start focusing on the hard times. You forget what brought you together. And that makes the relationship hard, right? So I think there's just keys to continue to practice gratitude, like focus on what your partner does well. It doesn't mean you don't address the things that need to be addressed, but I think if you make it more of an equation of 80-20 versus, you know, 80% positive versus 20% negative, I think you have more longevity to that relationship because you're recognizing the value and you're going to keep feeding things into that relationship to make it more valuable.
I know you weren't being math specifically, you said 80-20, but I would challenge the people to hear this message. I think that the things that irritate you, again, short of a major malfunction in a relationship, we talked earlier about honesty about certain things and, you know, and cheating, and those are bombs that explode. Okay, but the bombs are very few. I think having that perspective is important. So to me, I would tell people it's probably more like 99-1.
Really?
Because with the one being a bomb, for every year, every day that I've been married, my wife, I always compliment her on something that she does or done or did. I always bring it up. Hey, I just want to talk to you about this and say, I appreciate this is good stuff. There is so much positive, and I've never run out of things. This is my point. You never run out of things. And this is my point about 99-1. 80-20 makes the bomb, because the bomb it multiplies. It seems much more frequent. And those are things worth saying, I got to get out. The truth is, for most people, it's not bombs that are irritating them day to day. It could be, I don't know, we can come up with a list of things that are so minor that irritate people. Like, for example, my wife is a shock alert, everybody out there. It must be said, my wife is a blanket thief. Yes, at night, when she turns.
Something scandalous, blanket? Okay, go ahead.
That's right. When she turns over at night, she pulls the blanket. You all out there suffering from this blight know what I'm talking about. She turns and pulls the blanket with her. And somehow it never ends up coming back my way. Now, in theory, that could be really annoying. I find it funny. And I've never gone public with it. I'm confessing something now. It's out on the streets. There it is. You Google it and you'll see my wife stealing a blanket in the middle of the night. But the fact, my point being that most things are insignificant things when it comes to judging relationships. And I've found when I've worked with couples, most of the irritants, when people actually have to say them out loud, it's things like she steals a blanket at night. They never think of it like that, but as these irritants kind of build up and they're scratching at you and clawing at you, and then you just explode and everything is bad. And you're making your time with someone seem like it's 70-30, 30 with the bad, when actually it's 98-2. And do you have any pushback on that?
No, I agree with you. I think it's just life. Like, even when everything could be going well and there's one thing that's not going well, it's just human nature to focus on that one thing that's not going well, as opposed to flipping it and looking at all the things that are going well. So like COVID is a great example of that. Like, it's not great we got this virus, but I think there was a lot of good that came out of this situation. Yes. I think it allowed people to get to know their mates in ways they hadn't, because everyone was just kind of running around doing a lot of things. I think it allowed people to reconnect with their kids, because I read about it all the time, how parents are like, I was just running from one activity to another, and we actually spend time, because people look at that as time, but it's really not always time, right? Because your kids in that activity, you're there. That's but you're now, this COVID forced people to engage with ourselves. It forced us to reprioritize what was important. People realize they long for connection more than they thought they did, even though we have all the gadgets in the world, right? All the technology, all the so-called social interactions. And it also allowed us to slow down. Yes. But there were definitely people on the other end, like, thinking about all the bad things they were losing, right? Yep. So I guess my point is, it's all perspective. So your rule is good. Like, I have a friend, he's been married over 20 years, and he says he thinks of his marriage as a candy jar, in the sense that he's always filling up the candy jar with stuff. Similar to you, he's complimenting his wife, he's building up goodwill, he's doing kind gestures. He said, then when I fumble, it's like not as big of a deal. So he's being a little strategic with his, but like you said, that's a man, the end goal. That's right. And he said, so he's like, when I forget something or I don't take out the garbage, he's like, it's not as big of a deal, because I built up all this candy in the candy jar. Like, I built up all this goodwill. And I was like, that's really smart, the way you're thinking about that. That's right. Because that shifts the dynamic in the relationship. That's exactly, I once gave a talk on stage to a large audience of men, and I talked about that. I said, the truth is that you mentioned example about trash out or dish not washed, or I drop clothes on the floor here or there. My wife's going to say nothing. Nothing. Why? Why? Because the bank is so full. Right. It's like, I'm going to let this go. Every single day. I'm not going to say anything to this guy. This is the guy who tells me he loves me multiple times a day. This is the guy who's this, and this. He is overwhelming me with these positives and love and this kind of good stuff, and oriented toward my goals. My wife, to her goals, what does she want to accomplish? We talk about that. Is she going to say, hey, you know what? Your t-shirt on the floor, big problem. Can we discuss? That's never going to happen. She will just pick up the t-shirt. Hey, I saw your t-shirt. I put it away for you. And we move on with life. And I try to tell guys, this is one of the secrets. Is that you've got to be, you mentioned about the bank, you've got to be filling that candy jar constantly. I said, and then when you make a mistake, and you will, because we all do, or you forget something or whatever it will be, I love your numbers, relationships, you're 50% of the problem and 100% of the part of my corporate experience, because I just remember, like, I figured that out pretty early on, and it was reinforced through my learnings that 80%, 20%, what is it? No, well, it's the 80-20 rule, as far as, like, if people have, I'm trying to think of how they would always frame it. It's really 20-80 in corporate, so that's probably not a good analogy, but in corporate, they used to say like 20% of your business would actually be the majority, I think, right? Was that the way?
It's true, yeah. 20% of your clients, or 80% of your profits.
Or 80% of your profits. So that's what I was kind of thinking, 80-20. Like, once you kind of narrow down something under, like the 20%, like, is not as big of a deal, right? Like, I think I'm thinking of it,
right. No, you're right. Okay, here's my final lie men tell women. And I want to set this up by saying, this goes back to the very earliest days of a man's life. This lie has been told, or the absence of saying anything is the creating of the lie as well. And it is this: I love your cooking. See, see, a guy. No, see, here's the thing: a guy will, a kid, a son will never, if he's sane, will never tell his mom, "Mom, this really sucks. This spaghetti, this is the worst thing in the world." He may try not to eat it as much, but he's not going to say that because he knows that is. You don't even have to be in the book of being a guy. Probably page one is, so whatever you do not say to your mother you don't like her food. Even if you don't like her food, you like her food. Even if it doesn't taste good to you, you like her food. Don't ever say to her those words, "I don't like your food." So this goes on. So by the time a guy moves into relationship and then forward into marriage, he should be well guided on, when prompted, "I love your cooking," because it's just the best way to go. It keeps you alive.
He doesn't want to disappoint mom. I can still see that.
That's right. That's
Because
right.
mom just has that disappointed look if you don't like her food.
Oh no, you
It's
can't.
ingrained in you.
Oh my God, right? You've disappointed her, the relationship, the son, mom relationship is now in tatters. Everything, she has failed you. You're a son who doesn't care. It's an amazing, amazing thing. Basically, anything someone does for you, I always want to be grateful. And I want to make sure I show my gratitude. And I think showing gratitude, we talk about the lies men tell women and women tell men. We talk about the lies. I think making it a habit to constantly, I mean the word not consistently, because that may not be frequent, to constantly express gratitude is one of the key ways to sustain and grow a relationship. And with that, I'll shut up and let you.
No, I totally agree with you. And I learned, so after my mom passed, my dad, like, as my mom got sicker, she was sicker towards the end, and my dad started cooking more and more, and I was like, "You were holding out on us. You're a really great cook." And he did something I thought that was very humble, similar to what you do with your wife. And he really was, he didn't say much about it. And then recently I was like, I said it again, after my mom has passed. I'm like,
Mhm.
"You were a great cook. Why weren't you helping mom more with cooking? You could have been like, making some great meals." He said, "Well, I learned early that your mom really wanted to be more in charge of that. And I allowed her to do that. And she wanted to keep me out the kitchen." And he said, I honored that because she took great pride in making meals for you guys. And so he said, I didn't want to disrupt that for her. And I just thought that was such a show of love, right? And respect
Absolutely,
for someone.
absolutely,
Because it's like,
absolutely.
and that's that power of, even as a, when you are co-parenting and you have to adjust as a mom or dad, because there's one thing that one parent does better than the other, and you may drive yourself crazy trying to initially do it all the time, but then you realize there's power in sharing duties, right? That you can't do it all the time. And it could be as simple as swaddling the baby, because my ex-husband was way better at that than me, ironically. Or it could be cleaning the house a certain way, right? And learning that the person may not do it to your level, but appreciating the gesture and being grateful for it, that can make a relationship go a long way. So
Perfect, perfect. Well, Elizabeth, I have really enjoyed putting on this episode. Maybe we'll do more. This topic, lie versus lies, the 10 lies men tell women and women tell men. And it's been a lot of fun with you. And I think we've covered a lot of areas, but I think more importantly, we may have opened the door up to greater understanding between people in a relationship such that they can move forward. Do you have anything else you want to add before we let people go?
Oh, I just wanted to tell people, thank you so much, Coach Mobley, for having me on the show. I appreciate it. I enjoyed the conversation as well. If people want to learn more about me, my name is Elizabeth Overstreet. I'm a relationship expert. You can just look up ElizabethOverstreet.com. I'm all across social media on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And I also have a book called Love You and He Will Too on Amazon. So just, feel free to reach out. I love when people reach out and just ask questions. There's a place in my website where you could just submit a question that you may have about love or relationships. And I just, again, think that, finding the right relationship is so important. So don't be afraid to put in the legwork and be patient, because the results are worth it.
Beautiful, beautiful. Love it. Elizabeth Overstreet, Darryl Mobley, we love all of you. Get the love you want. Access people who can help you get there. And just more importantly, start with loving yourself and working toward that. Thanks a lot, Elizabeth.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Friends, thank you for joining me on the Darryl Mobley Show, your life coach on the radio. Let's do it again. Same bat time, same bat channel. Remember this, my friends. In life, you don't get what's fair. You don't get what's good. You don't get what's nice. You don't get what you deserve. You don't get what you wish for. And you do not get what you need. In life, my friends, you get what you do. Period. Make the person in the mirror. That's you. Do the right things, and you will win at the game of life. One more thing. Your life will not get better by chance. Your life will get better by change. Believe, think, act, win, and say it with me, enjoy life. Hey, wife, I love you and the kids. See you soon. Bye-bye now.
They don't teach this stuff in school.
And who do you propose teach this class?
You're on the air with Darryl Mobley, your life coach on the radio.
Let's take a quick break. I want to invite you to get my Enjoy and Grow Rich audio program and guidebook. In the Enjoy and Grow Rich program, you'll learn the secrets that will bring you more success and happiness. There's a lot in this program. This brings together everything that I've learned that can help you become more successful. From this, you'll learn the mindset secrets of multimillionaire entrepreneurs and superachievers. You'll learn the 10 steps to turn your life around. You'll learn how to replace limiting core beliefs with empowering beliefs and actions. You'll learn why you must get clear on your life goals. You'll learn about the time wasters that frankly eat your life away. You'll learn how to determine whether or not you're in a relationship or a situation. You will learn how to develop a winner's attitude, the laws of success, how to get work-life balance, how millionaires and superachievers are different, how to make 6 figures in 1 month, how to build character in your kids, how to create your future, how to turn negative habits into positive habits, how to set and get goals, why you must embrace your greatness, and so much more. I want you to get this program. To get it, just go to enjoyandgrowrich.com. That's enjoyandgrowrich.com. And when you get to that page, make sure you read everything on there, because I want you to see everything you get in this program. This is a master program. And if you're ready for it, it's ready for you. Again, that's enjoyandgrowrich.com. Hello, friend. I want to invite you to get a free subscription to my Live Your Best Life newsletter. It's fast and easy to do. Just go to CoachMobley.com. Click on the button you see there, fill out the little form, and you're in. Thanks.